We got started. Okay, so I'll start again because we got a few more people coming in, which is good. Um, Today's session is a follow-on from our conversation around venture capital investing and kind of a connection there with the folks from Lost Coast Ventures who have been involved working with Cal Poly Humboldt and um, on the creation and launch of this startup Humboldt, which Casey is going to talk about. But perhaps um, we could do just a quick introduction for Casey's benefit, or we could run that in the chat as we normally do if you have a full 20 minutes or so of content you want to talk about, Casey.
I think chat's fine. I know a handful of you. Hi, everybody. I know at least half of you, either by face, name, or signature on contracts. So it's great to see everybody. But yeah, I can jump right in if you're ready. Wonderful. So let me share screen first to make sure you can see that. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen by not? Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Excellent. Wonderful. And so I guess quick introduction for me. My name is Casey Flynn with Cal Poly Humboldt. So I serve as the Associate Vice President for Research and also the Executive Director of the Cal Poly Humboldt Sponsored Programs Foundation. So we act as the fiscal agent for the university for all of our externally funded grants and contracts, which is how I know many of you on the Zoom call today, because we have either grants and contracts or collaborations that we've helped to facilitate on behalf of the campus. So that's what brings me here today to talk to you about Startup Humboldt. And I actually think now that I'm seeing all these familiar faces, Greg, I had come in and actually presented an earlier version of this. Was it to the CRC Zoom at least a few months ago? So for some of you,
yeah, the cert.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. You're going to see very similar content, but as a nice spiffy slideshow that's a little bit updated from the first version of it. But it's great because I think for some of you, you've heard an earlier version of sort of where we are months ago. And we've definitely made some progress and moved a little bit farther along with our planning since the last time. So I'm going to jump into talking a little bit about how this collaboration got started and sort of who are the major players in what we're calling Startup Humboldt. Most of you are going to recognize many, if not all of these logos, because I see some of them even on our Zoom screens. And so these are all familiar partners in our community. But essentially, this is a new initiative that's going to be in the downtown Arcata. And this is really poised to aid Humboldt County's economic growth through a new innovation hub that's set to launch this spring that we're hoping is going to be a catalyst for economic development, community growth across the region, and a stronger connection between our universities, Cal Poly and CR. These partners have all been, I'm going to say, loosely working together for many years. It's not the first time that these people have come together under a joint initiative or shared vision for programming or for events or collaboration. But what's unique is that all of these partners have been doing things related to the innovation, entrepreneurship, economic development realm, but through just the partnerships, the connection, the networking. And we've been talking for many years about what would that look like if we actually had a space to be able to co-locate and provide sort of a more robust network of those services, because a lot of these sort of build off of each other. So we have Cal Poly Humboldt, we have our North Coast SBDC, and that's Will Franklin's shop that was previously in Old Town Eureka. And that's the portion of SBDC that's more of the community facing, like I would walk in the street to get services and starting up and launching my own business, which is a little bit different than the NorCal headquarters, which is our lead center that's also hosted at Cal Poly Humboldt that provides sort of financial and programmatic oversight to all of the different regions that are hosted through the lead center, which is upwards of 36 counties within California. So both of those are part of this initiative, as well as the Institute for Entrepreneurship Education, which many of you might have worked with or are familiar with Nancy Visner from our Cal Poly department. And now the Institute for Entrepreneurship Education has a nice shiny new logo as of this week. And they are sort of the anchor for Cal Poly on the student facing side, because that's where a lot of our students find out about opportunities with pitch competitions or startup weeks and things like that. Office of Research and Sponsor Programs, again, is what I represent as the fiscal sponsor for the university. College of the Redwoods is the other anchor partner for our student connection, and that's really driven with Chris Gaines' involvement. Los Coast Ventures, it sounds like from Josh's introduction, you got a deep dive with them before, so you know sort of what Dan Phillips and John Ballard are really envisioning with that organization to bring in that venture capital to emerging businesses from student, staff, faculty from the two educational institutions. And so all of these partners last April, so a year ago now, were together in a space and talking about the good work that everybody's doing, this network that's already been sort of a loose collaboration of like-minded people in these realms, but like what would that look like if we were to come together and to create this innovation hub that we were modeling after. For those of you that are local and familiar, you've driven past on 7th Street and seen this blue building that's behind the Arcata Post Office. For a number of years was hosted by another community partner. And it didn't have a lot of community foot traffic. It wasn't sort of a public space that you would get services or maybe have an occasion to walk into. So for those that had never seen inside of that building, this is the inside of that building. It was an amazing network of individual cubicles, and once upon a time, this was actually an old Ford dealership, I've been told, which is also why you have sort of the framing and the structure of that building. It's 7,000 square feet. And we've spent the better part of this last year developing this space into a new home for Startup Humboldt, for this innovation hub, and for all of those partners to come together and to co-locate. So when we walked this space last April, it was this vision of like, what would this look like if we all came together and sort of built a more formal consortium of those partners. And so now that space has been recreated into the Startup Humboldt Innovation Hub. What you see here is sort of the interior picture of, we've removed all of those interior cubicles. We've opened up a very large event space to do audience seating events, networking events, and have a lot of mobile furniture interior now to be able to convert from audience seating to event seating. We've also painted the outside. We are getting signage up pretty soon. And so this is a mock-up. That sign is not there yet, but it's shipped and will be up and soon, hopefully by our big opening. And then the interior, we really do envision that to be, for anybody that's had occasion to visit Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, they have an innovation hub called the Hot House. And that's always been sort of our benchmark of like, we want a hot house version for our university. And so their Hot House has a similar setup to what you see here, which is co-working spaces. And we envision that the outside of this building, these interior offices have partners that are there more brick and mortar 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, but you also have flexible workspace for this collaborative environment to be able to accommodate not only sort of short-term members coming in to use those spaces, but also a rotation of people that would be coming in to be able to co-locate to work as they might be gaining the services from that space or launching those business ventures in whatever stage that they are. This also gives you a different view of that mock-up and some banners that are getting installed. And I love Will Franklin has just joined us as well as one of the occupants of Startup Humboldt. Thank you, Will, for being here. And so he can attest, this is now a closer version of what the inside looks like. And we will be getting all of the signage up in the next few weeks. So when you do drive past, walk past this building, you're going to start to see this footprint that's representing these partners that are now part of this consortium that you would be able to find and access services and be able to collaborate with them. Will, do you want to say anything as one of those partners?
Thanks, Casey. This is really exciting. I keep telling everybody the opportunities that this co-location is opening up, the doors. It really feels great. We're going to have our first Veterans Business Outreach Center Summit for like we've never been able to host that. Just new classrooms. This is now the room you're seeing right now is a classroom for 28 people. They're having a great time learning about creative businesses like art businesses. The space is just, we don't know what kind of opportunities. It's really exciting. So I would just say this space, these partners are creating a lot of synergy already, and I'm pretty excited to be part of it.
Thank you. And we're still unpacking and getting settled, right? So you have all of those partners in this amazingly renovated open space. We're trying to make The potential for that really open-ended because it's going to continue to evolve. The longer we're there, the more partners and the more events that we host in there, it's just going to be able to adapt to the needs of that consortium and hopefully to the needs of the community as well. So you could find things like, business consulting and coaching, things that like the SVDC would be offering in their old spaces. You would find those happening. You would have panel presentations, speaker events, pitch competitions, as Will mentioned, classroom spaces. CR would be holding workshops. There's potential and interest from our business department about even reaching out to like local high schools and their entrepreneurship or business clubs. So finding ways to bring people into the space and having them to be exposed to this network of this ecosystem, right? One of the things that we've always struggled with is that we have all these individual pieces, but how does somebody find it, connect to the next stage? Like, I'm here in this development and I need the next phase or the next phase. And this is a space that you might have that entire pipeline operating under one roof, and they would be able to just walk you next door and introduce you to the next person in that business development journey that you're going to be needing in the next coming weeks. And so that's where having access to the space and being able to host and bring people in and expose them to all the different services that are under this same roof really does let us grow off of that innovation hub space. So again, our biggest goal last year when we all walked through that facility was like, how do we get these people in one central location to ease the access of being able to stumble upon services that you didn't even know existed, and also to get our students access to those as well. Like having our local SVDCs as a resource, having our CR and Cal Poly students be able to know that this network exists and to be able to launch these ideas through this, really supportive ecosystem is really important, and something that we haven't had formalized structure around before. And this becomes our shared satellite location for both institutions to be able to connect them to, as well as our community partners and community members that are looking for those types of services that can also find them through this building and through this space. So it anchors all of us together under one roof. And we're hoping that that is going to also catalyze our startups. What we've seen from the Cal Poly SLO hothouse model is that one of the biggest benefits that they've had through that long established structure is that they see a heightened number of businesses launching from students, from community members through that space, that are also then launching their business and staying locally into the area. They used to see businesses start and get off the ground and then move out of the area. And now they're seeing basically the entire downtown of Cal Poly SLO is riddled with businesses that have launched through the hothouse. They got their start through the hothouse, and they found the type of supportive ecosystem around that economic development that made them want to stay, want to start and grow their businesses locally. And that's another output of this, that we're hoping that we see the same type of return that this model has proven anchored to other institutions. Another exciting event that many of you probably remember that have been here long enough is Economic Fuel. Remember how great Economic Fuel was, both for our students and for the community. That program, once upon a time, invested a lot of sort of startup costs into this business pitch competition, and that funding went away and that program shifted, and other programs have come and gone since Economic Fuel. We've had the Awesome Business Competition led by Lonnie Grafman at Cal Poly that was hosted at the Arcadic Theater Lounge. There's been pitch competitions on both of our campuses, but we're trying to build back this sort of bigger infrastructure around doing a larger pitch competition, something more akin to what the glory days of Economic Fuel were, where we would have businesses launch with an actual startup package that could really grow these large businesses and hopefully, again, grow them to want to stay and to build here locally. So trying to get something off the ground that sort of either combines some of those events or creates and launches new events out of that space, with now the power that we have specifically with Lost Coast Venture and all the interest in this space and sort of the activities that are around that. That's going to also allow us to be able to fundraise and maybe build back something that was closer and larger to what Economic Fuel used to be for our community. So that's another really exciting potential. Like, we want to bring something like that launched through the Startup Humboldt Consortium and hosted by the Startup Humboldt space. Lastly, I'm going to leave you with Kristen Johnson, who many of you have probably worked with or know very closely, That's our executive director of our NorCal SBDC. She's also the chair of Startup Humble of our governing body. One of the reasons that I have to run mid-meeting is because we have a consortium meeting today at 4 as well. And that's the group of all those partners, of all those logos that I shared at the beginning, because that is, again, this partnership that came together with this vision. They are the primary sort of founding members of this space, and they're the ones that are meeting on the regular to help us get some of the framework around what is the space going to be, how is it going to operate, how do we bring new people into this space, and how do we leverage this exciting resource in a way that we're able to continue to launch new companies through there and to get those resources mapped to where some of that information needs to be. So the consortium is active, it's running. Kristen is a great point of contact. Will is also here, so if you want to see inside the space, he's another person you could reach out to say, I just want to see inside what's going on. And then we also have our grand opening and our ribbon cutting with the chamber happening later this month. And so it will be, when the sign comes up and the ribbon is cut, a space that if you're in Arcata walking down 7th Street, you can step inside and see it and meet us and interact with the people that are in there, because this is now, we're moving past the soft opening stage to we are fully going to be open by the end of April. And any one of you could be able to come in and access those services or start to see the beginning of that launch. So I'm going to pause there because that was all very quick. If there's any questions, or Will, if you want to add anything that I may have missed.
Awesome introduction. I would just follow up on some of the comments in the notes where the Awesome Comp is a piece now. Now that it's joined into the Startup Humboldt, it's a year-long immersive program. So it's much more. It went from one pitch competition to a full year of incubating, training, practicing, and then pipelines into other pitch competitions. And so we've coordinated with Blue Tech Valley, which is another innovation hub. We're getting money from all over. And what's really exciting, again, these opportunities just keep coming. We've been fundraising. Lonnie and I have been fundraising, but all of a sudden, those funds were getting little pieces. We might be able to, we're on the brink of working with Headwaters to get an endowment that would fund prize money in perpetuity. So all of a sudden, we don't beg for $5,000 every year. We're going to try, and we're getting really close because of angel investors who are interested in this. We are close to getting a true fund that would be an endowment. So exciting news already happening because of this place. And the place gives us a full year because of SBDC advisors, because of the other partners. It's going to give us a full year of incubation. Also really exciting is East Bay SBDC is in Oakland, and they have a pitch competition that the winner goes to the Pitch World Cup for $1 million prize. And so now Humboldt County has an invitation to the East Bay. So the pitch winner from our little Awesome Com startup can go to East Bay. If they win there, they get to go to the World Cup. So really crazy synergies that are very exciting for Humboldt County.
Thank you, Will, for adding that.
Super exciting for Humboldt, for sure. I mean, this is Casey, I heard you talking about the hot house in Slow, and I've been there and engaged with them over the years, and I've actually worked with a number of startups that have come out of there. And yeah, I mean, this is the model that's happening, across the state and across the country. And so to have something like this right in Arcata, I think is going to be a really, significant opportunity. And so really great to see this coming together. And I look forward to seeing that when I get up there soon.
Yeah, and it has, I mean, that's been our goal for over a decade, is like we wanted our hot house. And we've gone through different iterations of how could we grow that? What would that look like? And not any plan or idea leading up to this would have been a fraction of what this partnership is. It was all small thinking of like locating something on our on Cal Poly campus proper. There was not going to be anywhere near the collaborative community partnership that this consortium has built into. So I'm also kind of thankful that all of our ideas failed up until this one to actually get to the right time, the right space. And that feeling when all of those partners walked that space almost a year ago now, and just looking around like, we could really make this work now. Like, this is the time. It was the time, and it was the right people in the right space. And I think that we're really fortunate that the past year has come together in this way. And there's still a lot to do, and there's still a lot to figure out, and it is a work in progress, but to have everybody there and working and having that space buzz with just the excitement and the ideas that are getting launched, it's going to be amazing the longer it's running and the longer its doors are open.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I just made a note in there just about this question of accelerators, and I know that can be something that layers on, but having seen a few of these type of centers operate, having like a mentored, curated process that really moves people from, the idea to the maturation, and with an aim of, getting to scale at some point, that I've seen that be very effective, where without something like that, there's been occasions where, people would kind of, I'd say, not progress as fast as they might otherwise. So I know Marianne has that going on down in Mendocino, and Marianne and Paloma, but that would be another thing to consider as it starts to mature.
How I love the idea, right? And you're right, Casey. We've tried this many times over the years, and some of you may have been around long enough to remember Rural Community Ventures out of Tri-County EDC with John Gregory that came Golden State, and we also had a couple of little venture partner groups here. One of the issues we always had here was trying to get deal flow and the type of business profile that met the needs of even the most gentle of angel investors. We just don't grow businesses very fast here. And part of that is because just the entrepreneur that's in charge of the business doesn't want to, right? They're happy where we are. We've had a number that blew up, and then as soon as they did attract venture, they were taken out of the area. Yakima, Moonstone Mountaineering, even our most recent, which is not technically out of the area, but they moved all their production out of the area, was Natural Decadence. So I guess the question is, I'm curious about, how do we get the deal flow and really identify what are the criteria? And I know you can't speak for Lost Coast Ventures or any other angel investor, but how do we get what are the criteria that these investors are going to be looking for? And how do we, if it's even a goal, how do we make sure the business is here? Cal Poly does have the, great advantage of being equidistant, but less than 200 miles from San Jose and Los Angeles. So, how do we find those businesses that are going to take off and go to scale, and then keep them here if we can, so that we enjoy the long-term benefit of the local investment? I guess that's probably more a rhetorical question than anything else, but
I think it's the right question that today we don't have a good answer for, but I think we have a lot of people that are asking that same question. And I'm hoping that this space becomes a place that great minds can think on, right, and come up with strategies, or again, just that supportive network that if I'm a student launching a business and I see that there's enough support to be able to do that here in a community, that could tip the scales in a way that maybe they couldn't see that before. And even just the connecting our students to the SBDC in a way that we've been hosting as the lead center for a number of years, and most of our students don't know that or understand that connection of like, what is that? So like even that visibility of like, this is something that you can launch into, even as you're graduating and trying to get something off the ground. It's like, I saw that when we had Economic Fuel in a way that I just haven't seen since then. And I'm hoping that this can be a start of some of that, and is not the solution to that problem, but it has to be part of that puzzle.
And I know, it's interesting because Economic Fuel was a great program, and it it got better as it went along, right? Because it became less of an academic exercise. I remember getting business plans from the first round and going, I wouldn't fund this, and I fund it. It's a beautiful business plan, but I don't need 100 pages of charts. So it was kind of a little too academic for those of us that play in the investment, debt investment in my case realm. I'm wondering, and I don't know the answer to this. Were there, because it's been so long ago, were there any businesses that came out of that really did spring up to this venture level? I don't know.
Well,
Well,
there's still a couple businesses are here that won, but they're
Right.
not the scalable type. And I would
Right.
speak to
And I
we
think that's
don't
our
know this
particular
answer.
challenge here, right? I'd love to figure out how we can make that happen. And maybe it's the Cal Poly designation and some of those other new connections that.
I would say that Lost Coast Ventures is a mission-driven nonprofit venture
Right.
capital. So it's a little
Right.
different. Like their criteria is that it's rooted in North Coast, and their profits go back to Cal Poly and College of the Redwood. So finding those types of the angel investors are like, we got lucky with that one. But both John and Dan said, we would love it if there was more people in this space like us. Like they're not territorial here. We need another type of venture capitalist that will just, start a little smaller, or another type that is got a different mission. Like we see Startup Humble then having a center of gravity that might be able to attract other ones, and then that would be really good. But at least we're starting with a very mission-driven venture capital group that wants it located in Humboldt. And I really do think that the students, like Nancy Vissner's, is going to have class right here next week. So these students are going to see SBDC advisors and help them with that business plan, and immediately know that there's this place and the support. So maybe they don't leave. Maybe the talent flight, maybe we diminish the talent flight a little bit and create some more gravity here.
Well, and the brackets, right? You say want to be here, return the profit to the nonprofit, and there's a big center, right? Which is that business that, and again, I don't know what their criteria are to throw what they in terms of growth and throwing off investment return is. So good question. I mean, and again, I don't have an answer. I'm asking because it's been really a challenge for us and other rural areas for a long time to find. And we used to have venture capital forums and all sorts of things up here, but the deals just weren't that attractive, right? Because they just didn't offer, considering they were early stage equity plays, that the return just wasn't projected there. So I don't know. Hey, you said there's new minds, great minds, and I'm excited because Humboldt State really seems to be, excuse me, Cal Poly Humboldt. Where'd that come from?
Speaking of which, I know Casey has to get to her next meeting. So do you have any parting words, or we'll just see you in the next event?
Just to reassure Greg, it's not like a swear jar. We are still HSU at heart and Cal Poly Humboldt. So you're good. And I think that, like I said, I guess my parting words are just, it was the right time. It's the right space. We have a lot of the right players that have this vision and are grappling and talking about the same questions that are getting brought up today. And to have that space to just bump into each other, have those conversations, find each other, that just central location is just what I feel like we were missing to tip the scales in solving for some of that, or at least to get in that direction. And this is the hope that we're going to be just at the beginning of seeing what this thing launches and what this thing turns into as more people get exposure to that space, to come into that space. We're starting with a powerhouse of individuals, but we're hoping to get more people connected and then see where it goes. So I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of a concept that turns into something really great over the next few years.
Yeah. We have worked closely with your colleagues at Cal Poly or CSU Monterey Bay and their startup program for several years. And they have one way they deal with this issue is having different categories of Main Street venture, they have 3 different levels of startups they work with. And so I think there's a lot you can obviously tap into with the network, and it's really exciting what you're doing up here. So
We're excited, and thank you again for just taking the time and space to let us present. And for those, again, that had seen this a few months ago, to see sort of where we are in that process, and to hopefully be able to step inside the space towards the end of April. Once you see the sign up, that probably means that the door is unlocked. So please feel free to stop by and say hi, and just to visit and see what's happening with it. We'd love to be able to expose more people to just the new idea of what this is going to be.
excellent. Well, thank you very much for making the time, and have a good evening. And we'll invite our next speaker, Paloma Patterson from the West Company, and her colleague Marianne Petrillo and Mike Sholins here to talk about what's happening startup-wise in Mendocino.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to see everybody. We've got Marianne here. Technically, Marianne has retired from West, but we will never let her actually separate from us. And I am relying on her to weigh in on a few things here. She was the original creator of our startup program. And definitely want to welcome Mike. Mike is our client services manager and our resident expert on lending in our organization. So I will give a brief overview on startup, and then we'll talk a little more about the financing piece and how we're addressing it with our program. So give me a second. I was actually just updating our list of curriculum here, but let me share my screen, if I may. Okay, here we go. So our program, Startup Mendocino, is actually celebrating its 5th year this year. So this program began in 2019 and originally was envisioned as a pitch competition. I think the inspiration was a Shark Tank-esque style rural business accelerator program. So the idea is we are already assisting businesses in existence and helping them grow and become more sustainable. So the first year, Startup Mendocino, again, was a pitch competition. I think they had about 10 finalists, and Marianne, please weigh in. I was not part of West here when this happened. And the final prize was, or the grand prize was, a $10,000 investment. And it was very exciting. At that time, it was a very big program. It attracted a lot of people to the end culminating presentation. And we actually even had the former SBA administrator come speak to the program, Isabel Guzman. However, what happened is that COVID hit the next year. And what we found is that people coming out of COVID really were not interested anymore in a competition style program. Resources were scarce. People were barely keeping doors open. 98% of businesses closed. And the feedback that we received is that people were really wanting more of a supportive, peer collaborative environment where they could really meet and work with other fellow entrepreneurs in the community, increase their skills, and really have a community of other business owners that can help them not only in their current business, but also as they continue to grow. So what happened is that we came back and we re-envisioned the curriculum, and it became more of a cohort-based learning. So this program is an in-depth program that is 24 to 26 weeks long. It generally takes place from about January to June, and it is a cohort style program. So we every year welcome approximately 12 individuals out of a pretty large applicant pool. Last year we had over 80 applicants. This year we had close to 30. And we let 12 in. And there is a pretty rigorous selection process. You have to be 1 to 3 years in business. You've had to have had some of your own investment. You have to have some sales. So we really did refine the who we were looking for, because what we found is that when you're trying to run an in-depth accelerator, when you have businesses that are at very different places or levels in their business or years of experience, it's not as effective as when you get a group of people that are really around the same level of learning and knowledge base. So anyway, we changed it up to be cohort based, and now the applicants are put into 3 groups of led by an instructor. And I want to go over the so it's 3 peer cohort groups, and every other week of the curriculum is peer-to-peer learning. So one week you receive the instruction, and the following week you work on the lessons that you are and the different business plans and marketing plans that you're working on, but with your cohort. This year, the curriculum is based around these topics. So foundations of leadership, really understanding finance, unlocking capital. And for us, that's really access to loans and increasing sales, of course, building strong relationships, marketing, and then the pitch. So we do still have folks give a pitch at the end so that they know how to talk and sell their business, but it's no longer based on the amount that they're going to receive. Now everybody receives $1,000 seed grant to continue to invest back in their business. And this year, for the very first time, we're actually introducing what we call a Some Alum series, because one of the things that we've really been trying to establish through this program is an ongoing alumni of people that have gone through this program that can become a real supportive network for rural businesses and entrepreneurs here. And so this year, the continuing education series is for past alumni, and we're focusing on a few topics such as AI and different capital components. Mike, do you want to weigh in, as Mike is one of the instructors, to talk a little bit about the program? And
well, I think it's a good program in that it's I like the format that one week is going to be kind of, class, it's interactive, but more of a, instructional model. And then on the off week, you're in a even smaller cohort, and you are doing, follow up on, what the material is. But what I found in those cohort groups, is I've done this once from as an instructor, as a cohort leader, and once as just a guest speaker, is that a lot of the learning comes from those groups where it's the entrepreneurs are talking to each other, and they're really able to go in detail about what their problems are. And I saw where there's this kind of collaborative learning where someone says, oh, I'm struggling with getting this website or doing this, and there'll be someone in the group that had just gone through that experience and said, here's what I did and here's how I did it. So they're hearing the overall guidance from the instructors, and they're getting the reinforcement from peers that are in. And then where I've had, where they're starting to meet outside of our group, where someone's like, hey, it's a Saturday, I can come over and help you do this. So the friendships and the learning and the collaboration is really is reinforced. So that's the part of it that I really found valuable outside of just, the lockstep instruction.
And I'm going to stop share because it's really hard to talk to a screen of slides. And that was the slides that we had. But yeah, the idea is that we're growing successful businesses one at a time. And, the feedback that we're getting are people really are getting a lot of valuable experience and knowledge to scale their business. So one example that we have is we had a client, a new business start called Happy Rides. And she was a medical transport company that honestly came about because her father was going through dialysis and found that there was no non-medical transport anywhere in Mendocino County. This is a woman that, was driving her dad to dialysis every week and decided, this is a business I think I want to start. And she didn't have any business experience, but had this great idea and came to startup, and through startup received really the foundational training on how do you create a business plan? How do you create a successful business? How do you create clients? How do you finance it? And within, I think, 2 to 3 years, she went from basically having an idea to today she has over, I think, 5 vans. She is servicing at least 3 counties. She now has contracts with some of the major healthcare institutions and whatnot. And it's pretty amazing what a little bit of investment of time and knowledge can really provide to some of these smaller businesses. With that, I want to welcome Marianne to speak to this because, of course, startup was her idea and was her original concept. And I want her to speak a little bit to that, and also how we can begin to connect some of these businesses with the investment piece. That's not a piece that we heretofore have been able to really do. The aspect of financing, as I mentioned, that we're really focusing on is really a more around lending. However, we do see that as an opportunity, particularly with this Redwood region rise, as we, shine more of a spotlight on our rural businesses and the opportunities here. Marianne, you want to say a few things?
Sure, happy to. So yeah, this program is of course near and dear to my heart. It was started in 2019, and whenever I hear everybody present and stuff, I'm always like, yeah, this is pre-COVID and post-COVID. We all know that the world just so dramatically changed, we as individuals and how we interact with each other. On top of that, business changed. Businesses had to change. They had to morph. We're still going through it. I mean, there's still challenges. But in 2019, it was all about the pitch. It was all about, getting everybody really excited about this brand new business that was going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's why we did it the way we did it. We came right out the gate. We did a really big program. Everybody got up on stage. We trained them. It was an intensive training, and it was all like, I'm going to win the 10,000. No, I'm going to win this, and it was, and we got the whole community. We had 250 people come. They went to Mendocino College. It was very, very exciting. And then of course, COVID hit. And the reason why I emphasize this is because in our rural community, it changed really how everybody interrelated with each other and how they were able to really help each other and work together. And we all know how many businesses went away, and it has come back, and I would say that we're probably back up to those same levels that we were maybe pre-COVID, but the way we interact with each other has not come back. It's very, very different. So I loved the startup that was shown, with Humboldt and stuff, and that is, that's like everyone's dream, right? And it makes perfect sense to have it associated with Cal Poly, and be a space, a building, with rooms that you go to. But in our region, I mean, just for me to go to Ukiah is a 3-hour drive in one day. We can't do this. We knew, and we spent a lot of time internally looking at how our businesses absorb information and where they need to get it and how fast do they need to get that information. And then what are they going to do with that information in order to accelerate their business? And so that's when we started to really refine startup to move from competition to collaboration. And that's what Mike is referring to. Those cohorts are as meaningful, or if not more meaningful, because it forces groups to get together, and it forces these businesses to truly learn from each other, because that's another thing, was the supply chains that broke during COVID. So how do we make sure that people know who each other are and feel comfortable calling them up and saying, hey, I need a hand, can you help? That married with a formal instruction, a formal, be ready for a lender, interview, be ready for these things. That's what we're finding has been more and more successful. And as Paloma mentioned, we get a lot of applicants. It's important to keep it relatively small, but it is something that can expand. And when I think about, now that I'm doing the sector investment coordination for the sector for RISE, it does make me think about how do we get our existing businesses to be better, stronger, healthier, and then bigger? What are the things that we could really do with the businesses that are here? Not to say we don't want more new businesses in, we always do, and we want more innovation, but we want to make sure that the ones that are here are really rock solid. And I think, a hybrid model like what we've been doing with Startup Mendocino, if that's something possibly could be expanded, could be something that we work, with Humboldt, with Lake County, with Del Norte, because it is a hybrid model. And then what you do is you can make those cohort meetings be more local focused and stuff. So we struggled because we had started out calling it startup, but it really is about accelerating businesses. And again, that's one of the other learnings that we had, is that when we started it, we had people at all different levels, and it was way too hard. People were either going to be too bored or too overwhelmed, right? So we want you to have a little bit of experience in business. We want you to have sold something, and know, have gone through the pain of it. But I think now, with everything that's going on around funding and, opportunities and innovation, and the governor's economic plan, I really think that we have, some opportunities here to strengthen our rural businesses to be as competitive as possible, and, make the connections even amongst just the 4 counties to expand. If we had businesses in Fort Bragg who expanded to Ukiah, that's great. Like we have businesses in Ukiah who went up to Humboldt, great. Like, have a satellite in Humboldt, have a satellite in Ukiah, have a satellite in, it's like Black Oak Coffee has one in Ukiah and they have one in Santa Rosa. I mean, this is what we really want to stimulate, because there are small businesses, but if they could move to and have satellites in different populated areas, all the better. Then the brand becomes stronger.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Marianne. It kind of gets to the question of, venture funding is one thing, as we talked about. It's this kind of looking generally for the high velocity growth things, but in the rural setting and in the, most of the Redwood region, especially in that context, and really the North State, just being able to grow a few, venues for small businesses, that's a huge value add to the economy, both from employment and just revenue and tradable sector stuff. So finding a way to address that, and I gotta imagine it's a combination of the leveraging the funding various sources, but the SBDCs in particular, I think, have a key role in that. And the question of like, is there something other than venture investing that is, in sort of place-based investing from people with a desire to see that kind of outcome happen, in the region. I don't know what that's called, but I don't think it's venture, but it's kind of local interest or something. Maybe Greg has an idea. I could see he's getting warmed up there, but
Well, we're a debt we're a debt investor, if you want to call it that. We just do debt, we don't equity, but it's a real conundrum, right? Because the difference between debt and equity is you have an absolute responsibility to pay under debt, and you don't under equity. You share the risk, but of course, then the returns have to be much higher to mitigate, what will be losses, because you're at early stage. And we haven't been able to, individually been out figuring out up here in years about how we can do that, because we don't have the capital infusion to come in on one side. And if we do find something that's interested in that, then they expect a much quicker and faster return. They
Yeah.
have a 5-year out and, all
Right.
that. And we're like, well, wait a minute, some of our biggest businesses took 20 years to get to where they are. And so, yeah, it's a real conundrum for places like this. And
Yeah.
What have you found, Marianne and Paloma, in your work with the startup Mendo? What's been your main source of funding for the startups?
So I'll speak a little bit, and then I want Marianne and then Mike to weigh in a little bit, because it's a slightly different program. And one thing I do just want to mention and remind people is that West Center does host both the Mendocino SBDC and the Women's Business Center. So one unique aspect I think about this program is that everybody who goes through it also becomes a West Center client, which enables them to access ongoing free training and education for as long as they want to be a client and advising. So that, I think, enables them to have a very strong relationship and, again, access ongoing resources as their business grows or expands, or sometimes they change their ideas. With regard to start up our program, so the $1,000 that we give out, we do have to fundraise. So we do have to go out and find corporate sponsors or other sponsor dollars to pay for that. We can't pay for that out of any of our grants, typical grant funding. That being said, and we've long talked about actually wanting to make those stipends be bigger. You know, one of the other ideas we've had is talk about, you know, doing some kind of startup program or accelerator program that's really more industry based, so that we could have some more like-minded businesses growing. At one point, we talked about maybe having a blue economy accelerator program to really, you know, bring in some innovative new technologies that really could attract some new investments, as well as create, again, more of an in-depth learning opportunity for people either wanting to create businesses here or, you know, learn from other people that are doing work here. But I want Mike to speak a little bit to the other financing piece, because again, because we're an SBDC and WBC, the main focus that we've had with connecting our clients to capital is really through lending and other financing mechanisms, less investment. And Mike's really the expert around that. So I'd love for him to weigh in, and then Marianne can speak to it as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, because you got to consider the stage that these businesses are at, you know, 1 to 3 years. This isn't, you know, we've gotten a cohort of businesses that have been, you know, 5 to 10 years, and now we're going to be teaching them about ways to find, you know, capital to expand their business. So it's a different set of folks. You know, these people are really getting their businesses started. So frankly, a lot of the funding has come through debt, or, you know, they're looking for, you know, friends and family. Sometimes it's just getting them ready to turn to, you know, their Aunt Frida and say with confidence, this business, I have confidence in this business plan. It's this is probable, not possible. So that's, I think, you know, you have to consider the size and the nature of these kind of solopreneurs and what stage they're at. But I think there's definitely could be an avenue to have a cohort of businesses that are at a different stage in their development, and then, you know, open that up to, you know, folks that, let's say they've been in business 5 years or 10 years, and now you're ready to go regional, or you're ready to go statewide, and to put them together. And that would be a completely different lens through which you could bring in, you know, VCs or, you know, equity capital, or that point, because they're more mature and, you know, ready to springboard a little bit more. But I'll let Marianne comment on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's very hard in our region because of the, you know, distances between things. I mean, let's not pretend that doesn't happen. And people, you know, live far away in places, and you have them building up their business to a certain level that they're comfortable, they can manage it, they can live in that environment. And here we are coming along, and we want them to expand and grow. They have to be really mindful about how and when they're going to do that. And those businesses that we're talking about, you know, that have been around for 25 years now or 30 years and stuff like that, well, what we're seeing is a huge drop off, right? If those businesses aren't being bought up by another company, those businesses just go away. The bookstore that you always know, the coffee shop that you always know, just goes away because there's nobody there, the movie house, you know. And we don't have, when I say we, I'm not talking about West, but I think we collectively also don't have a mechanism whereby we look at those businesses, we analyze some of those businesses who have been around for 25 and start talking about how to transition them. Because a lot of these, I mean, that was one of the things I remember that we struggled with, is how do we help the people who want to leave, retire, move on, and they don't, and we don't want their business to go away because their business is a great business. But we couldn't focus on that because that's not what SBA puts their funding towards. They don't put their funding in that bucket, you know. But for a rural community, it's a huge economic driver to keep some of those businesses local here and, you know, and active. And I see, yes, Dream, Team One Dream. I was just about to mention that because I didn't know if Josh knew about it, but Lake County also has a startup program. Theirs is different. They've been able to raise a lot of money, and theirs is, I think, more of a pitch competition. But it is a startup type of program. So I'm not going to speak to it because I don't know all the details.
Yeah, because I did reach out to, I was on a call with one of the folks from the county, and they were not aware of a startup program in Lake County. So I knew that somebody had mentioned one before, so I'm glad, Stacy, thanks for putting that in there.
And Stacy, who's
Yeah.
the two women who started it from, and they're private, they're not government.
Mary Ann Schmid, which is always confusing because it's another Mary Ann, and Olga Steele. I
Okay.
know just from the inner workings I've had with them, originally their prize purse was much smaller the first year. Last year they were able to raise 150,000. But what I found interesting is it was all local dollars.
That's what
I thought when I
Yeah.
looked at that dollar amount, I just assumed it was outside investors, but was told no, it was actually, and I believe the county gave a contribution as well.
Yeah,
Well, Stacy, well, this is a good segue actually, because I don't know if you can speak to this because it was before your time, but I do think a really cool project that happened here several years ago was the project that EDFC did around investing in the Mendocino Wool Company, trying to raise capital through investments from local individuals. So I don't know if you know much or can speak to that, but I do think that is a very interesting model because, to your point, there is people with money here, and I think if we can find the mechanisms by which they, we can make it easier for them to invest, or there is some kind of ROI. That, and Stacey, I'd love for you to speak to that. But the other thing I'll just mention, I don't know whatever happened to Kickstarter, but certainly the whole crowdfunding idea too, we saw helped actually several of our businesses get extremely successful. And one in particular, I'll just mention, was this company Solatrack, which was creating one of the first electric tractor trailers. And, he actually wanted to manufacture them here. He was in Point Arena or Walla, somewhere South Coast, I think. But honestly, unfortunately, couldn't get the right permits and whatnot to really make the manufacturing viable in Mendocino County. So he did end up moving to Sonoma County, but we helped him in his early stages. We raised over $1 million through Kickstarter. And was able to, grow his business and went on to sell it for 20-something million dollars several years ago. But there are opportunities like that. But Stacey, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that project and what happened with that, because it is a very interesting model.
Yes, so we refer to that in the office as a passion project that came about many years ago. There was a local couple wanting to open a wool mill. They needed funding. So EDFC created this, well, I don't know, created isn't the right word, and developed this direct public offering. So locals in the community put forth their own money. I think the largest contribution I recall was like $5,000, one individual. And so it was a group of people that supported the project, put their private money into it to help get the business up off the ground. So as far as a learning curve, that was a good lesson for EDFC because the idea was smart at the time, but to have a nonprofit be the financial guarantee, it just wasn't smart. So we didn't take a loss on that idea, but we learned a lot from it. So our board of directors, anytime they hear the acronym DPO, the long-term members cringe because it wasn't the best. It made for some very eventful board meetings when they had issues that they were working through. But we do have a current project right now. It hasn't been unveiled yet, but our board of directors is looking to do something very similar, just not as a direct public offering. So as that develops, there might be an opportunity to tap in and help Startup Mendo too. I'll keep you posted.
The other thing I wanted to mention, Josh, and you would be most familiar because you were kicking around in the early days of the blue economy for Fort Bragg, but Paloma mentioned it. We have talked about this, and as a matter of fact, that was even one of the proposals that didn't get accepted in the Catalyst funding, but was to do a marine-based accelerator. Now that's a whole different world. Like what we're talking about is general businesses and growth, but doing something like that is very sector specific and in a place where people want to be, because it's meaningful to what they're trying to invent and innovate on. I think could have huge benefits to the region, the area, and really get us kind of on the map. But those things, they like you have to push it. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill. You've got to get to that point where all of a sudden you start to have some wins. And when you're doing something that's sector-based, like blue economy, or it's tied to the environment, I mean, we'd have to have the water and the resources and the place on the, on the harbor. And I think Fort Bragg is probably like more open than Humboldt is right now, because Humboldt has its own now with the wind energy working on it. So I just, I think we could also be looking for pockets of opportunities within the 4 counties to sector specific.
I think that's a good idea, and I would even encourage you to think bigger than the 4 counties. Like if you're going to do a sector play in the blue economy, I'd want to think about it, all up and down the West Coast, and you're then having all your people that and that's where you would get the deal flow, I think, because to Greg's point about deal flow, I've seen that be, that's where if you don't have enough center of gravity, it can't sustain itself, and it's kind of less interesting for everybody. But if you could do something, maybe starting, just from the Bay Area north or whatever, with some key partners. I mean, I think the sector play is actually a really good one, and especially after all the work that's been done in the jobs first activity, where the sectors have been kind of called out across the different regions. You can start to align, and so especially for rural areas where that historically you don't have the density of deal flow. If you could have subject, and I think it also gets to what you learned just from doing Startup Mendo, which is this hybrid kind of work environment, could really be you get together occasionally and you do your work in the place that you're working, but you access a common hub of finance and expertise and all that. So I like that idea actually a lot. So Ross has been really quiet, but I saw his square light up. So now you got to say something, Ross.
Where's the button? Where's the button? Where's the button? Where's the button? Am I on here?
You're on.
All
We can
right.
hear you, but we can't see you. Now there you are. Okay.
Well, I switched from a different, not Zoom, it's something else. And so it was on the top and it's on the bottom. I really don't have anything. I was on a board meeting for the California Coalition for investments, and so it's a new thing. And unfortunately, it overlaps with this. So I missed the first half.
I
So
just thought you were so excited you had something meaningful to say, but
no, I would have raised my little hand and turned my
okay.
Do you still need that? I just saw your question in the chat, Josh. What lessons were learned from some?
Yeah, I mean, because I think that's a kind of a, this is a rural arena that we're dealing with, and like, I think you touched on some of those, but what other ones? Were there other key ones, from the rural
And
business development perspective?
because Mike was getting sitting in the hot seat working with folks, I'd love to hear, Mike, any of the kind of lessons or observations. I could just tell you the high level broad that what we struggled with was how big it should be, how many people in the cohort, how do you make sure all the cohort is always engaged, and so that's why every year we iterate, is this too long? Is this too short? Is this too high level? Is it too, basic information? The balance of the cohort and the instruction seems to work, and the 12 to 15 model seems to also work. But because, Mike, I'm pointing to you because you did that cohort, I was wondering if there were things that when you started and when you ended that you kind of saw you would do differently for businesses as they came into the program.
No, the only thing I would comment upon is that, living in a small town. I mean, my town's 1,000 people with one stoplight. So what we do as a community in these small towns is band together in so many ways. We have a volunteer fire department. There's parents that are teaching soccer after school because we don't have anyone that knows that is not certified to teach soccer. So the community is accustomed to coming together around so many things, but not business. So I think this gives an avenue for people to take what's normally in their DNA, is like, I'm looking after my neighbor because we have to look after each other, is now making that connection to, like, now you can look to someone in your business neighborhood to then make these connections to help. And then once they understand that, I think it opens it up and makes them more comfortable sharing and letting the ideas flow. But I don't have any great takeaways from a macro level, but I think that's just one of the importances of why this program works so well.
And I think the importance that you're saying there too is that because these are businesses that are already in the community, people are also aware of them. They're aware that, and the cross learnings that they're doing, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I didn't know you do that. I'm going to hire you to, fix my computer. Or, oh, I'm going to hire you to do the sign because you're a sign shop person. And now we're starting to see that there becomes a real connection to keeping and buying things for the businesses in the county or in the area. Right?
And they're also reinvesting in the program. So we have one business that does like HVAC work, and last year was in startup and honestly became so successful. I mean, and his wife already retired, or she didn't retire, but she's now working for his business. And I think he has another employee, and he actually donated back his stipend to the program to continue. And so that's the other great thing that we're seeing too. And that's, again, what we've been trying to develop, is really that community of entrepreneurs that they have someone to call up when, they're having that HR issue or that lending issue. And they know whether they call West as the advisor, or they call up their fellow, some alum for that.
Some alum number. Call your some alums.
Call your some alum.
That's good. Well, thank you for that. I think that's a lot of great information on this topic. And I know that we talked about at the last regular meeting of the Economic Development Finance Working Group that we are going to be shifting our focus over the next several weeks or several months, actually, to the end of June, into a sector-focused kind of topics for each session, and we're gonna really be doing them every 2 weeks. And so the first kind of shift into this sector-focused sessions is going to be the health and caregiving sector. And I see Tina's on here, and I don't know if you're ready to be put on the spot or not, but what do they call that? The Socratic method. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Hi, I am at T-ball practice talking about community togetherness. And I love that model that y'all have going with the peer support of small businesses supporting one another. For the health and caregiving sector, We are meeting
On the
April
16th.
16th.
Yeah.
Yep, it'll be from 3:30 to 5, same time as this meeting. And we'll host some folks from Mendocino County that work in healthcare, and they have a program called Incubate that focuses on recruitment and retention of healthcare workers and some innovative strategies there. And then we're also hosting Connie Stewart, who will give us an update on the public-private partnership that helped see the idea of a behavioral health crisis center come to fruition in Humboldt County. And then the last program we have, or speaker we have for the April 16th meeting is a few folks from the California Health Facilities Financing Authority, or CHFA, and they will give us an update on lending and funding available through their organization, which is a state-based organization.
Awesome. And Tina, you've just done a great job of bringing this together. And I'm just showing this flyer that Leonie put together. Really, as you'll see this going out and being sent around in various newsletters and things. But I wanted to show it also as an example for any of the other sector investment coordinators on the call here today. It's you guys are so deep in the sector, and we'd really love to support you in getting something similar put together for your respective sessions. Tina did a lot of back end work to bring the speakers together and the topics, and just from your depth in the topic area, we're going to look to you also for that. And so if you want to take the initiative yourselves and go for it, we totally support that. If you want to engage with us to help think through, different options for speakers and all that, we would welcome that as well. But I just thought Tina did such a great job here on this first one that we might showcase this a little bit to get your juices flowing on the respective topics. Abigail, do you want to run through, is this convenient, what the topics will be for the coming sessions for each of the sector sessions?
Sure. Is that April?
So that's Calder, April 30th. Okay.
May.
And that's Marianne. So that's May 4th and May 14th. And then May 28th will be renewable energy. And is that Matthew Marshall? Is he the guy on that one still? I think he is. Yeah. And then June 11th will be just sort of a roundup, with the idea that these would help inform the activation planning work. So anyhow, that's just a little bit of an advertisement to think about it and get, reach out to us if you want feedback or support in bringing the sessions together, or even producing once it came together, Leonie jumped right on it and made that nice flyer. So there's a system here. So anything else before we wrap for the day on this session on startup opportunities in the region? Okay, Greg has nothing. Kelly's hard at work there, and thank you all for hanging with us. Again, we'll post this on the website as soon as possible, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone on the 16th, if not before. Okay, thank you.